Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte fight that is going to be happening this weekend. And I believe, all in all, that this is going to be on the ESPN Plus app. I believe that this is going to be a pay per view on ESPN Plus, which I certainly don't think is a bad deal at all because I think that Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte, I think that this is a very, very good fight. And of course, for those of you that don't know who either of these fighters are, maybe you're new to boxing or you're wondering all in all, what I think about both of these fighters. Tyson Fury, of course, is, somewhat of the long reigning WBC champion now, especially ever since he captured the title from that of the former champion of the WBC, Mr. Deontay Wilder, the Bronze Bomber. And of course, Tyson Fury, he pretty much proved overall how good he was when he came back in the sport of boxing. First fight, in my view, I thought that he beat Deontay Wilder, even though he scored a draw. In the second fight, Tyson Fury left no doubt. And in the third fight, once again, he left no doubt. And in my view, Deontay Wilder, even though I would have not ranked him as one of the top 10 pound for pound fighters, I probably would have ranked him within my top 20. Maybe at the least, or, maybe at the most, stretching it out, top 25. But Wilder at the time when he was undefeated probably would have been within my top 20. So Tyson Fury, not only does he have a win over Deontay Wilder, but he had a win over the great Vladimir Klitschko early on in his career as well. Of course, if you take a look at Tyson Fury's resume, it's not necessarily stacked with repeated A name after A name, but he has a good enough resume overall to prove that he is a decently great fighter. And he's not just a decently great fighter, he's an all-time great fighter. I don't think that Tyson Fury, all in all, would have been able to accomplish the things that he's been able to accomplish over the athletes and over the fighters that he was able to, like that of a Deontay Wilder or like that of a Vladimir Klitschko, if he was just some average run-of-the-mill fighter. When you take a look at Tyson Fury, Tyson Fury, in my opinion, is a mix all in all of great athleticism. And certain people all in all, they may say, what the hell are you talking about? Because they may take a look at Tyson Fury. They may take a look at the flab and they may take a look that, he's not really someone that looks super duper muscle bound. But there's certain people all in all that they may be able to fool you overall with their physique. And Tyson Fury is one of those fighters. He's one of those people. Tyson Fury is never going to be a person that is going to win Mr. Universe. Tyson Fury is never going to look like, he's never going to look like a bodybuilder. He's never going to look like Anthony Joshua. He's never going to look like, one of those slimmer 6-8 pack dudes like Deontay Wilder. All in all, who look super, super articulated with their muscle. But what Tyson Fury does have when it comes down to it is that he's very decently strong all around when it comes down to it. He has very decent punching power when he needs to. He's a person all in all that has great conditioning, great mentality when it comes down to it, great stamina. I've never really seen Tyson Fury truly tire out in a fight before when it comes down to it, at least not to the point to where he was dead tired. When it comes down to it, Tyson Fury also has great confidence within himself, and he truly believes that he is the best heavyweight in the world. He believes that he more than likely probably could defeat anyone in the history of that of boxing. So it is what it is, which is good for him because, of course, if you are a boxer, if you're a professional boxer, or even if you're an athlete, you're supposed to believe in a way, especially if you're on that level, that you are the greatest that has ever stepped into the ring. So it is what it is. So I don't really have a problem with that. But anyways, when it comes down to with Tyson Fury, when it comes down, and of course, let me bring this up before I really give my fight breakdown and my fight analysis. And Dillian Whyte, of course, since I did mention him, Dillian Whyte, of course, is the person that is also another British fighter, and that's what another reason why this fight is going to be so interesting is because this is going to be between two of the best British fighters on the planet Earth, at least in that of the heavyweight division. And Dillian Whyte, of course, has been waiting for his title shot for years upon years now, I believe. He got good wins over Oscar Rivas, I believe, Derek Chisora. He got a good win over Joseph Parker, Alexander Povetkin, and there may even be a couple of others that I'm currently forgetting at the time. But Dillian Whyte has pretty much proved his worth as a very decent fighter, and he does deserve a title shot. The question is, will he be able to win this fight? We'll see. But before I really get into this fight breakdown and analysis, let me bring up overall something with Tyson Fury in this Daniel Canahan situation. Now, of course, for those of you that have not heard this Daniel Canahan situation, some of you may have, some of you may not have. I've not really done a whole lot of research on it because all in all, when it comes down to it, it doesn't really, attract my attention that much. But Daniel Canahan, who, of course, apparently was a former Irish mobster and maybe overall still may be somewhat involved in that. He's a person all in all that was a former advisor, I believe, of Tyson Fury, or maybe an advisor of Tyson Fury. And not just Tyson Fury, but I believe several fighters. Another one of those fighters also being as well Mr. Terrence Bud Crawford. But Terrence Bud Crawford, especially by a lot of these channels, especially by a lot of the channels that I tend to review, like the LDBC or New Media channels, they're not mainly going to mention Terrence Bud Crawford. You know basically who they're going to mention. They're going to mention Tyson Fury, and you may ask, well, why do you think that is? Why are you mentioning this? The reason why I'm mentioning it is because there's going to be a lot of people that try to trick you. Oh, well, Tyson Fury, with our allegations, everyone said that we were crazy when he cheated, which they were. They were pretty much the dumbest excuses that I probably ever heard in my life, because I don't think that there was any validity towards them. There was no logic. There was no objective reasoning or empirical data behind them. But when it came down to it, all in all, and some of the stuff that they were alleging was basically that Tyson Fury was putting egg weights over on the glove, or that he was punching with his hand and his fist lower into the glove. Which, of course, if you know anything about boxing, then neither of those things really would make any goddamn sense anyway. But when it comes down to it, all in all, and of course, are there forms of cheating? Yes, they are. Or yes, there are, excuse me. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, they're basically going to bring up Daniel Cannonier with Tyson Fury because they're very pissed off that Deontay Wilder overall did not win that fight. They wanted Deontay Wilder to be remembered as the best heavyweight of this era for pretty obvious reasons if you've seen their channels when it comes down to it. And they know overall that pretty much is never going to happen. They understand now that is never going to happen. So basically they're trying to do damage control. They don't want Tyson Fury to be remembered as a great fighter. So they're going to spread those narratives that Tyson Fury was a cheater and all sort of bullshit when it came down to it. And basically, the more that Tyson Fury is successful, the more they're going to try to tear him down. So it is what it is. But just thought that I would bring that up because you are going to hear certain channels, especially that of the LDBC and new media, try to tear down Tyson Fury because they don't like someone like a Tyson Fury, mainly because he's a Caucasoid fighter. But it is what it is. Let's just be real. But anyway, getting into the fight prediction overall, just putting that stuff behind it, let's talk about the Dillian Whyte versus Tyson Fury fight breakdown and who I personally think is going to win this fight. Well, just to really get straight into the facts and just to get straight into the argument and to get straight into the fight prediction and who I believe is personally going to win this fight, I do have to personally go with the Gypsy King, Tyson Fury. I think all in all that Tyson Fury is more multi-dimensional. I think that personally, in my view, that he is probably the most multi-dimensional heavyweight in the world of today. I think that the last time that we've seen a heavyweight, in my view, that was somewhat as skilled as what a Tyson Fury was, I think the last time that I probably seen a heavyweight like that was someone like a Lennox Lewis. And some people may disagree with that. It is what it is. If you believe that Lennox Lewis was clearly greater than Tyson Fury, that's your view. In my opinion, Tyson Fury, the way that I see him fight and the way that I see him be able to fight in a multitude of ways, I think that Tyson Fury, I'm not saying that he would have beat anyone that would have been in his path. I don't think that there's ever a 100% confirmation of any fighter doing that in the history of boxing. But what I will say is this, because that's a hypothetical, and we can't just allege 100% facts and truth with a hypothetical. But Tyson Fury, I think, could have held his own with almost any heavyweight in the history of boxing. It doesn't matter if we talk about Lennox Lewis. It doesn't matter if we talk about Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko. It doesn't matter if we talk about Muhammad Ali overall, or maybe even someone overall, maybe like Mike Tyson. It doesn't matter overall whoever we talk about. Tyson Fury, who's 6'9", and someone all in all that has an 85-inch reach, and someone all in all that can weigh almost damn near 300 pounds and can move the way that he can move, not only with his head, but also with his feet when it comes down. And has the boxing IQ and the multitude of, of great dimensions that he has, and also coming up big in big game moments. Tyson Fury would have been a massive force for anyone to defeat at any moment in time in his career. Especially at this point, because Tyson Fury, I believe that he's about 33 years old at the current moment in time. I believe that he'll be turning 34 this year. If I'm wrong about that, someone correct me. But Tyson Fury, he is, in my opinion, an all-time great fighter. And that's why, in my view, he is one of the top 5 pound-for-pound fighters in the world today. Not only did he defeat Deontay Wilder, in my opinion, with ease, pretty much in all 3 fights, at least somewhat with ease, at least clearly, let me say that decisively. But when it comes down to it, all in all, Tyson Fury did not just defeat Deontay Wilder, who in my view at the time would have been top 20 pound for pound when he was undefeated. He also defeated, of course, the great future Hall of Famer in Vladimir Klitschko, who of course was one of the top 5 pound for pound fighters when Tyson Fury defeated him as well. And Tyson Fury didn't just beat them, he pretty much embarrassed them. He toyed with them. It just is what it is. So Tyson Fury is a person that is a very great fighter. He's not just a great fighter, he's an all-time great fighter. And you can tell that. Now, Dillian Whyte, I do say, or I will admit, all in all, is a very decently tough challenge. He can be a person that I think can be a very decently tough challenge for Tyson Fury if Tyson Fury is not very careful. But what Dillian Whyte kind of reminds me of, he almost reminds me of a great version of Derek Chisora. And of course, for those of you that did not grow up with Derek Chisora, or those of you that may not remember him, Derek Chisora was basically a gatekeeper for a lot of people. He was a British he was a British fighter. When it came down, he was a British fighter overall growing up, and basically once he did, fought with Tyson Fury, I believe that was the first loss of his career. And Derek Chisora, what he mainly is that he is mainly a pressure fighter. Now, Dillian Whyte, he mainly seems to be a pressure fighter as well. That's not me saying that he can't fight on the back foot. I've seen it a little bit against Joseph Parker. I've seen it a little bit against some of the other fighters as well that he fought. He can fight a little bit on the back foot. he will throw that jab out there. I don't think that he has an A grade jab, but it's a decent jab nonetheless, at least for him when it comes down to it, and compared to some of the other heavyweights today. Dillian Whyte also has a very decent left hook. He has very decent body shots. He has a very decent right hand as well, especially a very decent overhand right. So Tyson Fury does have to be careful because if overall he's not able to somewhat push Dillian Whyte off in the correct manner, Dillian Whyte overall maybe can get on the inside of him when it comes down to it, at least near his body. And maybe all in all, he may be able to wear down Tyson Fury over time. Now, in my opinion, that's going to be a very tall task for anyone to do out there. And the reason why that is because Tyson Fury, not only is he just so big, but he's very powerful. And he can fight very well on the inside. He can fight very well on the outside. I think all in all that Tyson Fury, in order to beat Dillian Whyte, and I'll explain overall what I maybe think that Dillian Whyte has to do as well. I think what Tyson Fury is going to have to do with Dillian Whyte, I think that he's going to have a similar strategy to what he had with Derek Chisora in the rematch, which is basically at first within the first few rounds, at least if you're winning, those rounds and able to outbox him, maybe you circle around him. Tyson Fury is a person that has great stamina. He's not a person that usually runs out of, stamina. He has excellent physical and mental conditioning. He has great confidence within himself. Even if he gets hurt, he can recover very, very well, as we've seen overall in a multitude of fights, not only just the Deontay Wilder fights, but the Steve Cunningham fight and a couple of other ones. But I believe that Tyson Fury, in the first few rounds, that maybe he should try to circle around Dillian Whyte, even though he is going to have to push him back here and there, or try to box him in the middle of the ring. Maybe overall you don't want Dillian Whyte capturing you up against the ropes. I think that Tyson Fury, that maybe overall, he'll want Dillian Whyte kind of in the middle of the ring, or maybe Dillian Whyte backing up. And I think that the more you have Dillian Whyte backing up, which is possible, because after a while, even though he doesn't have bad stamina, he can maybe run out of it a little bit. He also does not have an A-grade chin. You can hurt Dillian Whyte. And Tyson Fury, in my view, he really has to use overall, the jab in this fight. I think that he should double, triple jab Dillian Whyte. Dillian Whyte is not a person with an A-grade defense. When it comes down to it, he is a person that, I'm not going to call him chinny, but he can be hurt. And both, punches that you notice that knocked out Dillian Whyte in those fights against Anthony Joshua and Alexander Povetkin, you notice that both were a right uppercut. Dillian Whyte, because of his style all in all, and the way that he ducks down a lot of the times, especially not protecting himself when he needs to try to get out of trouble, he can be very vulnerable to an uppercut. And Tyson Fury has a very vicious right uppercut especially. Really, both of his uppercuts can be very, very vicious, especially when he attacks to the body. I believe that Tyson Fury, in order to win this fight, I believe that his strategy will be more than likely to try and outbox Dillian Whyte around the ring, kind of be on the back foot a little bit for the first half of the fight, maybe for the first few rounds. And then I think that he's going to try to back Dillian Whyte up. I believe that he's going to try to pressure him, kill him with uppercuts, kill him with the jab, kill him with the right cross. When it comes down to it, I believe that he's going to mix it to the body, mix it to the head, just like he did with Deontay Wilder. And I think that more than likely he's going to try to slowly anticipate his moves and slowly try to break him down incrementally. That's what I believe all in all that he's going to try to do. I believe that the fight more than likely will probably look like the Derek Chisora rematch, where eventually Tyson Fury has a very decent chance of stopping Dillian Whyte. But if he's not careful, if Tyson Fury overall finds himself hurt early, against Dillian Whyte, or if Dillian Whyte just goes to the body and gives him a rough time, maybe all in all, he's able to come back and hurt Tyson Fury, or maybe he hits him early and Tyson Fury isn't able to recover the same. Who the hell knows? Anything can happen. Maybe Dillian Whyte, maybe he could get the stoppage. Maybe all in all, he can get a decision, especially if he's able to put Tyson Fury up against the ropes, able to get there quickly. And all in all, he's able to go to the body a certain amount of the times, come up top with the left hook and come up the top of the overhand right, mix it up, use that jab, especially to the body. You are going to be shorter. You're not going to have as much of a reach as Tyson Fury. He certainly doesn't have a bad reach for his size. He's a person that has a 78-inch reach, but Tyson Fury is a freak in nature. Tyson Fury is a person all in all that has an 85-inch reach. It's going to be very hard to get past that. And on top of that, Tyson Fury, even though he may have the disadvantage certain times on the inside, he is a very, very good inside fighter, even sometimes against fighters that tend to be shorter against him. And he knows how to use that jab. He knows overall how to use his arms and overall use his punches to kind of not only use them as rangefinders, but also to kind of blind his opponent and all in all, keep them at a distance while he's setting them up for a counter. He kind of knows overall how to manipulate their movements, kind of like what Floyd Mayweather Jr. does at times when he was overall fighting. And sometimes that's how the best of fighters, that's what they know to do. That's something that Canelo Alvarez knows how to do as well. Whenever you see Canelo Alvarez throw a punch, sometimes he'll stick his lead hand overall right in their face, so claw it right in their face. That way they can't really see what's coming next, or overall he's controlling their hand movements, or he's controlling their face. So basically they can't move while he's doing something. Tyson Fury will have to do a lot of that in this fight. He did it with Deontay Wilder. He did it with a certain amount of other opponents. He's going to have to do it with Dillian Whyte as well. So we'll see all in all what happens. So that would be my advice to Tyson Fury. I would say all in all, kind of test out Dillian Whyte within the first few rounds. You never know really what he's going to try to do. He may try to come out aggressive early, or he may be a little bit tentative to throw. We'll see what happens. If I had to guess, more than likely maybe Dillian Whyte, maybe he'll be a little bit more tentative, but you never personally know. He could come out a little bit more aggressive as well. You have to watch out for the left hook. You especially have to watch out for the overhand right. So Tyson Fury is really going to have to use his feet in this fight to move back and forth, move in and out. He's also going to have to be a person all in all that, is just on his A-grade game, especially with his defense in this fight. So we'll see all in all what happens. Dillian Whyte, my advice to him would be, is basically to try to get in on Tyson Fury as much as you can. Try to use that jab. Try to, jab to the head, jab to the body. Overall, try to get in. Try to hit him with that overhand right if you can. Shoot that right cross to the body. Shoot that right cross to the head. Do a little bit better than what Deontay Wilder did with that, because Deontay Wilder, he's not really an A-grade body puncher. So maybe if you can get a Tyson Fury's body early, maybe I'll know you can get something off. Maybe you can surprise him. Maybe I'll know you can hurt him a little bit early on, or maybe he won't like the body shots and maybe he'll start backing off. And then maybe you can get on his inside range. And overall, because of course he has a 7-inch reach advantage on the inside, it's going to be advantage for Dillian Whyte because he has the shorter reach. So maybe Dillian Whyte can have the advantage there. And if you do have Tyson Fury up against the ropes, try to keep him there. Usually, know how to cut the ring off, get those hooks in there, dig those hooks in there, dig a couple uppercuts to the body here and there, shoot that left hook to the body, shoot that left hook to the head here and there, overhand right over the top. That might hit Tyson Fury. Sometimes he can be a little bit vulnerable to a right, so we'll see what happens. But it's going to be very particularly interesting. The unfortunate thing with Dillian Whyte that I see, though, however, is that I just don't think that he has very good feet. He's a person that doesn't have the slowest feet that I've ever seen, but his feet are very, very flat. When it comes down, he plods around a lot. He can create slower movement, and he just doesn't move around that well. So when Tyson Fury does move, when he does move in and out, not only do I think that Tyson Fury will have way more than enough power to possibly hurt Dillian Whyte, but I think all in all that Tyson Fury, that he's an excellent counter puncher. He has excellent timing, and I think that, his feet, even for his size, will be decently quicker than that of a Dillian Whyte. So I just don't know how well Dillian Whyte's going to do in this fight, but we'll just have to see what happens. But it's going to be very, very interesting. For Tyson Fury's sake, he is going to have to be willing to get in there sometimes and back Dillian Whyte off. He also is going to have to, be on his A-grade game when it comes to counter-punching ability. If Dillian Whyte is trying to get inside on your range, you're going to overall have to blind him with the jab. You're going to have to throw that jab down the pipe, get that good potent jab that Tyson Fury usually gets out there when it comes down to it. And you're going to have to say, you're going to have to show him that basically, listen, if you want to come inside my range, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get popped with something. You're going to get popped with an uppercut to the body, or, popped with an uppercut, straight to the jaw, or a right cross. And basically, it's going to be very hard to hit me because I'm going to be moving around. I'm not just going to stand in one spot, which is usually what Tyson Fury does. He usually does that very, very well. In terms of Dillian Whyte, my advice to him would be, like I said, come in with the jab, be unpredictable. Try to shoot that left hook to the body, shoot it up to the head as well, throw certain combinations. Overhand right over to the head, at least when you have him up against the ropes. I don't think it would be a bad idea either. He has an excellent overhand right. Right cross to the body, I think, would be just what the doctor ordered as well. But we'll see what happens. This fight is very particularly interesting. I guess my last note, all in all, for this fight would be that a lot of people believe that, looking on the surface, that Dillian Whyte, because, he maybe looks to have more weapons than that of a Deontay Wilder, when it comes down that they may say, well, at the end of the day, this is going to be a harder fight for Tyson Fury. And there's certain channels, even like a Dante's Boxing Nation, that have said that because if Tyson Fury ends up losing this fight, basically they want you to believe that Tyson Fury was just some hype job. That's what they want you to believe. But I don't believe that Dillian Whyte is a bigger threat than Deontay Wilder. Now maybe one could say that because of the style, that maybe Dillian Whyte for Tyson Fury, that he is more of a threat than Deontay Wilder. But who knows? You never truly know until they get into the ring. Styles make fights. Matchups make, overall their styles make great matchups. So we'll see all in all what type of matchup Dillian Whyte can bring to the table here. But it's going to be very interesting. I do not personally believe that Dillian Whyte is quite the threat of what a Deontay Wilder was, because I think Deontay Wilder had that extraordinary one-punch knockout power. But we'll see all in all what happens. It should be very, very interesting. He does have decent power, though. He does have somewhat a decent boxing ability, and he has overall gotten through adversity, at least in some of the bigger fights, like against Joseph Parker, Oscar Rivas, Derek Chisora, Alexander Povetkin. So we'll see what happens. It should be very interesting. But anyways, I'm actually going to predict Tyson Fury to win this fight within about 10 rounds. I believe that he is going to stop Dillian Whyte. I'm going to go within about a 10th round TKO, but it should be very particularly interesting. I believe all in all that the fight is going to get stopped, but we'll see what happens. Would not be shell-shocked if Dillian Whyte won the fight or pulled off the upset. I give Dillian Whyte maybe a 30% chance, maybe 20 at the lowest, but maybe at the highest a 30% chance. Wouldn't be shocked, but I just think that Tyson Fury is a little bit too good for him. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to y'all later. And I also may possibly post a Canelo Alvarez fight prediction very soon, but more than likely that's going to come next week because I kind of want to post that fight prediction a couple of weeks in advance. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, we'll see overall what happens with this. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to y'all later.